Hello, my name's Nick, and today we're going to be doing several tests. First, we're going to start with an absolute manifold pressure test, cylinder power balance test, cylinder cranking and running compression tests, and we're going to end it with a cylinder leak down test on several different motors. Here we are on this Colorado. Here we're going to be doing an absolute manifold pressure test. We have our vacuum gauge here. Inches of mercury is how they're measured. We have it all the way through. Right there we found our vacuum port. So we have this end, it's going to be plugged up, and we have our vacuum connected. So we're going to go ahead, have the engine started, and then we'll show you what it is. So I'll go ahead, plug it up. Go ahead, start. Okay, so as you can see, right now we're at 15 or about 16 inches of mercury. The rule of thumb is you want between 17 and 21 inches of mercury. So while it's plugged up, you can see that it has a slight oscillation. It keeps on going down, a little bit up, kind of moving down. That's a symptom of a burnt valve, or it keeps on going up. And if we do a snap throttle is a test. You bring the throttle down really quickly and then stop, you'll see what happens. One more time. Alright, that's enough. You see the needle went to about 0. It never quite reaches 0 because there's always vacuum. And then it goes a little over where it was at spec. And then it goes back up. So that's snap throttle. And we have it moving a little bit. But right now it's going up. So because the engine is warming up, you want to work on a warm engine, it's getting back to the right place. So about 18, 17. Perfect vacuum right now. We're going to go ahead and shut it off, and we'll do our other tests. Alright, so our next test is going to be a cylinder cranking and running compression test. We've already done this, but I'm going to go ahead and go over what we're going to do. You have to remove the spark plugs and the coil, of course, on top of it, that we have insert into the cylinder that you're going to be testing. We went ahead and took all of them off because we want to test all the cylinders, but we're going to show one. And then, if possible, you want to either remove the fuel injectors or unplug the rail so that it's not activating. That way you don't get any raw fuel into the cylinder, which would not be good. So we're going to go ahead and get that done, and I'll catch you in a second. Alright, so as you can see, the coils and spark plugs are out. We've disconnected the fuel rail so we don't have any raw fuel going in. We've inserted our adapter into one of the cylinders we're going to be testing, and here we have our gauge. Here it is at 0. So now we're going to go ahead and crank it. Alright, so we've cranked it to the spec. That's good. And you can see it's holding pressure right there. That's good. Alright, so we're going to have to retry that. Go ahead, Tito. That's enough. Alright, so as you can see, we're holding at about 149 to 148 PSI. So for this particular engine in this Chevrolet HHR, that's pretty good. That's exactly what we want. We're in spec for one cylinder. We've already tested the other cylinders and they're all good. So we're going to go ahead, release the pressure, put everything back together, and then we're going to move on to our next test. Okay, for the cranking and running compression test, a couple things to remember is that your running compression is going to be lower than your cranking compression, because for cranking you want all of that power to go through, and then running, everything's kind of settled down and it's running smoothly. All the systems are working in harmony, so the compression is going to go down just slightly. So don't be worried about that. It's going to be a little different, and that's completely normal. It's in spec. There's a couple other things regarding each one. You're going to need to test each cylinder because you don't know which one's a problem. These cylinders are all good. This is just for testing purposes. This is a JTEC trainer vehicle, so a couple things may look wrong with it, but right now it's running in spec. It's pretty good to go. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next test. Alright, for our next test, we're going to be working on this Toyota Camry for a cylinder leak down. What we've already done to prepare for this test, we've moved the spark plug from the cylinder we're going to be working on. because the engine's not going to be turned on, we're okay. We don't need to remove the injector or unplug it. So what we did already was we moved the cylinder to top dead center on the compression stroke. That means the valves are closed and the cylinder is all the way at the top. So you're really only testing the compression chamber or the combustion chamber of the cylinder. So I want to see if that's leaking. There's going to be a couple different noises. If you hear a hiss from the throttle body or the intake side, that means that an intake valve is going to be compromised at some point. So you're going to have to do a full diagnosis. If there's a hiss from the exhaust, you can hear that from the tailpipe, then it's going to be an exhaust valve. If you hear a hiss from the block, there's going to be a cylinder leak, whether or not it's going to be a piston head or if it's going to be the piston rings. That's up to whatever you're going to be doing with an actual investigation of it. So what we are going to do, we have to attach our adapter, and then we have an actual tool that pumps air into the cylinder attached to shop air. We're going to hold the crank at the position, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to go from there. Okay, so here we've attached the line, the adapter, and the tool to shop air. I have my assistant, he's holding the crank. I've added air. It has 100 psi in the cylinder, and we're at 80% leak. So it sounds like it may be coming from the exhaust. So we know that during our further inspection, we're going to need to check there. But as of now, we're going to head to our next test because we're showing off some leak tests and vacuum tests. All right, our final test of the day, we're going to be doing a cylinder balance test, or our cylinder power balance test. You can do this either manually or with a scanner. You just go and you have to disable certain things and you can measure it. That's with the scanner. But manual, all you have to do is you have to plug or take away either the coil or the fuel injector. The fuel injector is a lot easier. You're not dumping raw fuel. And what you're testing for is you're testing for a difference in the engine, how it's performing. So if you disable an injector and the performance changes, like the engine starts running worse than it was before, or if it starts running bad, then you know that cylinder is putting in work, so it's actually good. It's kind of the opposite. If it starts running bad, it's good. So then if you take your cylinder away that has nothing and the cylinder still runs good, like how it's running before, because the cylinder's not contributing any power, it's okay. Or the cylinder is actually bad, rather. So we know that that's our problem cylinder. This would be a test you want to perform before a vacuum test, just to diagnose which cylinder it is, or possibly you want to do this after a vacuum test. This will bring it down to one cylinder, and then you can do the following tests, such as you can do your cylinder leak down and cranking and compression tests. That would be the best option. You want to do this in a special order. So what we have to do for the HHR is we're going to put it back together. We have our spark plugs and our coils we're going to put in, and then we're going to put the fuel injector or the fuel rail back together, and then we're going to unplug. We're going to have it running, unplug one fuel injector at a time, and if it changes, then we know that cylinder is good, and if it doesn't change, then we know that cylinder is bad. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. Catch you in a second. Alright, so here we're going to finish our power balance test. We discovered that the fuel rail, the injectors are going to be way too hard to unplug. We're going to face burns and scrapes, so it's not going to be worth it. So right now we're going to start by doing the coils. So we're going to go ahead and start the engine. Alright, so go ahead and disable plug. Alright, now plug it back in.
10 seconds.
Plug it back in. Alright, so as you can see, when we unplugged it, plugged it back in, it's running really rough right now. So by doing that, we've confirmed that by the power balance, that one is doing a lot of work. And with this particular engine, we have to restart the car. But that's just to show you that by doing this test, we can see that the cylinder is doing a lot of work. Because it was running pretty smooth, and then we deleted it, and now it's running rough. So that's the end of this test, and we'll move on.